Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I'm Hamza Idris. With barely 72 hours to the planned nationwide protest tagged End Bad Governance protest, sections of the public seem to be putting final touches to their plans to occupy Nigeria's streets in protest to the state of the nation's economy, pushing millions of Nigerians into untold hardships. While this is on one hand, the government, on the other hand, seems not to be resting on its hours as it continues to engage with leaders cutting across socio-cultural and religious strata, impressing on them to prevail on their followers to boycott the forthcoming exercise. While it has been on this, the administration has also become very vocal about all of the interventions that it has unveiled to cushion these said difficulties. Speaking of which, for instance, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has officially enacted the new national minimum wage law. Tinubu conducted the signing ceremony during a Federal Executive Council meeting, which he chaired at the council chambers of the presidential villa in Abuja on Monday. The bill had been swiftly approved by both houses of the National Assembly the previous week. Senate President Godswill Akpabio, along with other National Assembly leaders, attended the ceremony with the FEC members. This marks the first instance in the current democratic era where the council, under the president's leadership, has welcomed legislative leaders into the council chambers during a FEC meeting.
Well, I'm ecstatic. I'm excited about the Nigerian worker, and the national minimum wage amendment is for the whole nation, for the federal government, for the states, for the local governments, for the private sector, and even for individual employers. So I think this is a great day for the workers in the country. We are not only doubling the minimum wage, we have added something on top. Initially it was 30,000, now it is 70,000. Like I said, this is minimum. This is not maximum. Any employer that has a capacity can pay as much as you want. But no Nigerian worker will offer services and be paid anything less than 70,000 from today.
Well, I think very clearly this is just one more action from the president to show that he cares about the Nigerian people. In addition to signing the Northeast Development Commission Act, the Northwest Development Commission Act, the Southeast Development Commission Act, this has never happened in Nigeria. So I think this movement from 30 to 70 and reducing the negotiation years is clear demonstration of a commitment to redirect, refocus, and reposition Nigeria for greatness. I think we commend that.
Sorry, sir. We need someone.
Well, viewers, there you have it. A new minimum wage signed into law by the president for the benefit of all Nigerians. But is this enough? How many Nigerians are going to benefit directly from the new minimum wage? Is the signing of the bill into law enough reason for Nigerians to shelve the planned protest? These are some of the questions which will help shape up tonight's conversation as we speak with both sides, government and the citizenry, to provide a balanced narrative on the issue. In a chat with the Trust TV, Mr. Otega Ogra, a senior special assistant to the president on digital media, reveals that the federal government continues to worry over possibilities of the proposed mass demonstration taking a negative stance, as planners of the protest are yet to come forward to dialogue with the government, which he says they are very open to. Here is how the conversation went.
I would like to start by saying one thing first, that it is the constitutional rights. It's guaranteed in the Constitution for every Nigerian, to speak or, civil dissent. The Constitution guarantees that. But at the same time, it is very important to note that there's a very thin line between civil dissent and violent, demonstrations. And that's what we're saying. The government is basically saying you have a right, to go out on the streets to protest if you want to. But in a situation where it has been said in the open on various platforms everywhere on Twitter, on Facebook, someone runs an online radio doing the same thing. That this is about destruction. This is about rage. This is about them attacking things. People have come out to say, oh, they are going to make Nigeria worse than Kenya. They're going to make Nigeria like Sudan. I don't know if you've seen those countries post, violent demonstrations. It's nothing we would want on our mothers, on our fathers, on our communities, anywhere. And it's also the duty of a responsible government, because every right has its limits. Under the law, it's the duty of a responsible government to maintain peace, to maintain security, to maintain stability. If a section of the country wants to protest, hope it doesn't infringe on the constitutionally guaranteed rights of other Nigerians. So that's that on the first hand. On the second hand, I like that you mentioned the removal of fuel subsidies and everything. We also need to be aware of the facts of the case. First things first, by law, the subsidy ended at the middle of the year because it wasn't budgeted for beyond then. All President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did was put a stamp of the president on it that is not going to go against the law. Yeah, so Mr. President did not just remove the subsidy out of his own free will. By law, Nigeria couldn't have a subsidy beyond that date, except maybe, another approval was sent to the National Assembly for that. But it needed to make it clear, because we all knew Nigerians had been clamoring for this for years. The subsidy had to go. Now the question is, did Nigerians understand the impact of what they had been asking for? Because we also see that happening a lot of times. There's a buzzword pushed around and everything, and a lot of Nigerians jump on it saying, oh, this is the reason why this is happening, without fully understanding how it affects every other thing that they do. It doesn't take rocket science to see that the person in the seat of the president, which is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is doing all he can to, restructure and ensure that Nigeria, starts to earn more value for his money. Nigeria starts to be more fiscally disciplined in its spending, and that the benefits of these things drill down to the people. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. Mr. President is very much aware. He said it at various fora. We first need to stabilize the country before we can even start to do anything. You can't build, on faulty foundations. Anytime it's been done, and yes, we've always said, okay, let's patch things up and see how we can work around the situation. But we do not have that time again. Nigeria does not have the luxury of time. Our yet unborn children do not have the luxury of that time, waiting for things to be patched, and then we go back to square one because we didn't put the right fundamentals in place. And that's basically what you're doing now. The states are receiving more funds. The local governments now, by virtue of the Supreme Court ruling, will be receiving more funds, directly to them, so that the impact of, governments can be felt at the lowest levels of governance. And that's what we're looking at, not being sensitive. But let me push it back to you. What does sensitive mean? Sensitive is understanding that employees, whether be they federal, states, or private sector, deserve at the lowest of the lowest a living wage. But sensitive is also knowing that a certain amount, like the amount which was requested initially, was only going to drag this country further back because of inflation, because of, the funds, a lot of things, a lot of factors, was going to drag the country back to where we're running away from. That is being sensitive. Sensitive is knowing that, okay, a 70,000 minimum wage, which Mr. President finally agreed with Labour, is good, but it's not good enough. How do we, add more, to it, or reduce the impact on your income? How do we do that? Sensitive is being able to say, okay, for those of you with children in universities, here is the student loan for you. Don't forget that there was a bill already in the House, which was initially passed, and then we sent an amendment back to the House. Mr. President sent an amendment back to the House and the National Assembly, and what did they do? They expanded it to include a lot more tertiary students who weren't covered in the initial bill. Being sensitive also by Mr. President is knowing that, yes, we've put the students loan in place, but that's to take care of only one segment of the society. There are a lot of people who do not have children in school, who might not be able to, or who do not even want to send the children to higher education, the artisans and all those things. It's also being sensitive in saying, okay, I'm creating the credit call, to help people manage their finances responsibly. So all these things are playing together. You are sensitive is knowing that, hey, there's a lack of proper public transportation in this country, but there are a lot of commercial vehicle owners. Why don't we find a way to help them, to reduce the impact of the fuel subsidy removal on that? Enter PCNG, the Presidential CNG Initiative. At least, a couple of million buses and commercial vehicles, whether private or public owned, are going to be converted to CNG free of charge. So that is being sensitive. That is knowing that, see, people need more, but people are going to get more in a way that ensures the safety, the security, and financial viability of this country for the long term. And that is what being sensitive to the needs of Nigerians are. There are a lot of things, a myriad of issues, but we have to do what we have to do to ensure a stable future and the prosperity of lessness of certain protests and their impact. Let's take ourselves back to 2020. You had a group of young Nigerians who were open out there complaining about what they believed to be police brutality. Was it a genuine complaint? Yes. But at the point in time where people infiltrated their protests, due to its faceless nature, and started to cause chaos in other parts of Lagos, not even the ground zero as I am one to call it, they weren't there. They couldn't control those outcomes. Buses were burnt, people were killed. Earlier in the day, let's even use the October 20th as an example. People were killed in other places in Lagos. Businesses were looted and everything, even like 3-4 kilometers away from, where they claimed was the ground zero. And at the end of the day, everything happened, all that happened on that day happened, and about 166 buses were burnt, public transportation. I remember I mentioned something earlier about how people do not realize the impact of what they do because they don't see, everything through. By the time subsidies were removed, what did Lagos have? Lagos had inadequate buses to fill in the gap and reduce the impact of the fuel subsidy removal on its citizens. $1.5 billion and counting, in losses. Just because, every attempt where we could have sat down, had conversations, were rebuffed. Regardless, in negotiation, two sides have to shift. But we could not see that. And because of the faceless nature, no one could stand up and stand out and take responsibility on behalf of the group to negotiate, and actually push and seek accountability from government. If there's one thing this government has shown is that we are ready to be accountable for our actions. We are. There are times when Mr. President has made, certain policies and we get feedback from the people, not because the policies were not tested, not because we did not go through rigorous testing of those processes, but the people just had a different, feedback to it. And we went back to the drawing board. And you've seen we're not afraid to take back something and bring it back. That is responsibility. That is someone who is willing to touch the grassroots, to lead. We are not sitting down in one high tower or on top of one, high horse and saying, oh no, we know what is best for Nigerians. We know the numbers. We know how things look. We know how difficult it is for Nigerians, to cope in this global economic downturn. It's not limited to Nigeria alone, but Mr. President has pleaded and has sought, Nigerians' patience at various opportunities that say, I know it's not going to be easy. I know this is going to drain you. I know this is going to take your time. But please bear with me whilst we put the right things in place. AGF, was able to test the constitutional basis of, allocations to various arms of government. You've had diverse, feedback and opinions about it. But one thing I need to say, and I'll say it, I've been saying it before and I'll say it again. Mr. President is a federalist, who believes in constitutional democracy is always pushed for proper decentralization of power. And Mr. President is someone who would not interfere in any other arm of government in the way it operates or whatsoever. But it must be done on a constitutional basis. Constitutional democracy is what he's always preached, all his life, and true federalism in the true sense of the word. So this is a welcome development. Now, the people can easily track. And I hope, even amongst young people, this will bring about many more young people looking to go into politics and governance at the local levels. It starts at the community. You can point all your fingers at the federal government for all you want, but at the end of the day, you need to look at it, this way. There's the concurrent list, there's the, exclusive list. What each arm of government is meant to do is clearly stated in the Constitution. And that brings us back to education. I do think that we really need to harp on civics, social studies, and governance in our curriculum from primary school to the university level. People need to understand their laws. The devil is always in the details. People need to understand, people need to be more involved in what is going on with their elected representatives in the National Assembly, in the state houses of assembly. How do the laws in the state I stay, the laws made by the state house of assemblies, how do they affect me? How do they affect my livelihood? How do they affect my businesses? How do they affect my communities? And it's the same thing we want to see on the other side. How, is the federal government doing its own work and devolving what needs to be devolved to the states, devolved to, and it goes to many other things. Mr. President is not going to be involved in, putting pressure on the judiciary. He's not going to be involved in putting pressure on the National Assembly. He's doing his work that he has been elected to do, that is clearly stated by the Constitution, and he expects that other arms of government, be they, at the national level, that is the judiciary, the legislature, the regulatory agencies, for instance, like the CBN, NMDPRA, NUPRC, the various regulatory agencies who have some level of independence from executive meddling and tampering. Mr. President is not going to meddle. And the same thing goes to the state government. He is not going to meddle in state affairs. Ultimately, he's the chief security officer of the nation, but he also has to allow people to do their work the way it is. But what we're going to do is support every arm of government. So one of the first things to do upon getting into office was to ensure that we reviewed, the pay structure for judicial officers. That is not meddling. That is providing support as the federal government to an arm of government to ensure that they can be free from, unnecessary pressure from those who want to use the judiciary to attain, for whatever reasons. And there's the same thing too. The states, their allocations have thoroughly increased, some by 2 times, some by 3 times, some even more, since we started this financial restructuring of the nation. How are they ensuring that these benefits or these dividends get back to the ordinary people?
So the grievances of Nigerians might be misplaced.
I don't want to say the grievances are misplaced, and I would be a hypocrite to say that people's grievances are misplaced. There is no government that is perfect for each and every one of its people. Even if they're perfect for the entire populace, you have political opposition. They would have an issue with almost anything you bring out, But at the end of the day, the interests of Nigerians are paramount. And this is what I tell a lot of the political opposition. The few times I have to respond to them, bring valuable, options to what we have placed on the table. The president is not the president for APC alone. It's not the president for the Southwest or Lagos alone. No, it's the president for all of Nigeria. Are the political opposition, whether it's Alhaji Atiku Abubakar or Mr. Peter Obi, are they ready, to see or to take the hand that the president has reached out to them and said, see, let us work together for the glory of Nigeria? Are they ready to join hands in doing that? Even if they are not ready, are they ready to bring in or bring to the table, valid minority opinions or policy initiatives or directions? The president will listen to it. He's opened the doors for that to them. It's left for them to see whether they will put their personal, interests over national interests. but that table is open. So any Nigerian that is disgruntled may have a right to, but we are open to also listening and seeing how we can, make things better for everyone. And I think that's the crux of the matter. It's sort of protected under the Constitution. However, if you are aware that people who are planning this dissent with you, who have come out in public to say that they are aiming for destruction, they are aiming to make this country a wasteland the way a Sudan was, a Libya was, and they're saying, oh, those countries are, tiny compared to what they intend to do here. And you still allow yourself to be a part of it. At the end of the day, there's only one person the responsibility lies with, when all is said and done, and that is you who allowed yourself, despite this evidence out in the public, to still join something that could lead to loss of lives, loss of property, looting, destruction, vandalism, and all that. So you have to ask yourself, are you ready to take responsibility for the destruction that those amongst you, some amongst you, have promised that they will unleash on Nigeria? That is the question that everyone who is saying they want to protest must ask themselves. And you need to also do the second thing, which is, do you know who is behind all of this? You can't say, oh, an idea is there and the idea is that we should protest. You cannot have the full picture because people are saying they're faceless of what the protest is, what the protest intends to do, and then you say, oh, you're going to join them to protest. Are you ready to take responsibility for that? That is a question that a lot of people need to answer. And can you guarantee that those you are in protest with, as disorganized and, disgruntled they are not going to use that protest as a platform to achieve other nefarious purposes? If I were not in government, nothing would make me go to the streets, given what I've heard from some people who are mobilizing for the protests, say in public, I will not be seen on such streets or participating in such a protest. Because at the end of the day, my family, my community, or even I myself can be a victim of the terror that some people that are mobilizing for this protest are saying they will unleash to the general public. At the end of the day, who is going to rebuild your mother's shops? Who is going to raise those that may be maimed or killed from protests that turn violent? Who is going to fix, who is going to replace those things that people are going to lose because some people say they must unleash destruction on Nigeria? The president cannot be distracted at this time. He is doing everything he can to ensure that Nigeria has a stable base upon which to build for the future. And he's going to do it. That I know.
Welcome back. Yes, that was Mr. Ortega Ogra, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital and New Media. We'll now take a short break, and when we return, the conversation continues. Don't go away. The executive hasn't been the only arm of government that has been vocal about the need for Nigerians to give the Tinubu administration some time to fulfill its campaign promises. Take a listen to what the Senate spokesperson Yemi Adaramodu had to say about the planned protest.
The government said, we know there's problem, we admit there's problem, and we know that a problem no is half solved. And that we are now dead serious in making sure that we solve those problems, especially economic problems, which has occasioned maybe the rising cost of living in Nigeria, especially food. Apart from the 2023 budget that was subsisted then, we made available the supplementary budget for 2023 then, and the fulcrum of it was agriculture and food security, and security itself. And then the 2024 budget was basically made to give succor to Nigerians on security, agriculture and food security. And then the a pending supplementary for 2024 was about the minimum wage increase that had occasioned through the demand of the labor force of Nigeria, so which we have done. Then definitely it means that the National Assembly has done its own. And when we now talk about protest, so some people are saying, oh, like Kenya. I said, what?
So these are two different situations.
Yes, and then in Nigeria, there had never been an instance whereby the National Assembly wanted to make law, and then the populace said they don't want that law, and we went ahead to make that law. So it has never happened in Nigeria, and it will never happen, because if we want to make any law, and then because that's why we opened it up. The processes in Nigeria is quite very different, because there's always going to be a public hearing whereby the public will now tell us that what they want and what they don't want. Secondly, is that some people will say that, oh, President Tinubu, when he was a former governor, he led protest. Yes, he did. And when he wanted to do that one, he was known. Professor Wole Soyinka that joined him was known. Then my brother, Femi Falana's son, was known. So the leadership of that kind of protest, was known. And then they held press conferences and they told government what they wanted. And so in this wise, we want to know the protagonists so that we will know those people that we have to sit down together with, then that the National Assembly had to confer with, and then ask questions and then provide answers and solutions. So that is how, that is what we mean that, yes, if we want to have protest is an inalienable right of every citizen of Nigeria to do. But if you want to do it, you must come in clean with it. You must state what you want, and then you must not be faceless. Because when you are not faceless, then dialogue will be possible. But when you are faceless, dialogue will not be possible.
And in the House of Representatives, lawmaker representing Abak, Etim, Ekpo, Ika Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State, Jimbo Clement, is calling on Nigerians to be careful of what they wish for, and rather roll up their sleeves and commit to making Nigeria the country of our dream. Take a look at what.
The leadership of Nigeria, indeed the National Assembly leadership, has no fear in terms of anything. We were eminently elected to lead, to govern. That is exactly what we are doing at this critical time. Of course, it is enshrined in our constitution, the right to freedom of assembly, protest, but it has to be peaceful. The qualification has to be there. So every Nigerian has the right to express their grievances with respect to government policies, government implementation that are at variance with their core expectation. It is ingrained in them to do that. But in doing that, you must show the part of peace that your freedom to express your grievances does not in any way inhibit other people's right. So it's a welcome development. They've sent their messages, and we at the end of leadership, we are equally receiving it, and we are doing something practical about it. In as much as you have the right to protest, have you taken into consideration in your planning the intelligence in the first 1 hour of your protest, the second hours of your protest, the 6 hours of your protest? Have you envisaged it? It's called intelligence. If you have not done that, you only just want to express the spur of the moment, then you are not actually doing so much in terms of thinking. Then I will advise you to shape the protest and give government a chance. Before we went on our vacation, we passed the supplementary budget to implement the new minimum wage of 70,000 naira. Those are things that this government is doing, listening to your yearnings and equally responding appropriately. So Nigerians, let me say this. We cannot afford to forget that public order, economic prosperity, security, and progress are not the natural order of things. They depend on ceaseless effort and attention from an effective and honest government that the people must elect. The underlining word there is the people. Nigeria is buildable. Every developed country that we see and hear Nigeria to be like, we are built by human beings just like you and I. It is fortunate that you have come into Nigeria in a time like this, where you have seen things that are not working, that is calling your attention to equally roll your sleeves and do the needful for us to build Nigeria, for Nigeria to be reckoned with among committee of nations, that other nations will yearn to equally come to Nigeria, just like we yearn to go to other places.
Reactions upon reactions from the executive, the legislature, including the Senate and the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, we couldn't get anybody from the judiciary to lend their voices to the unfolding debate. But then, joining us in the studio now to provide insights into the development is Jide Ojo. Mr. Ojo is a public affairs analyst. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Quietly, for 30 minutes, I saw you've been watching. The summation. Do you think that Nigerians will be convinced by what Ortega, senior special assistant to the president, said, what Yemi Adaramodu, the spokesperson of the Senate, and then the member representing back in the House of Representatives, they all said that protest is not the way to go?
Well, it is in their own interest to say that, because they are going to be the biggest loser if there is a violent protest in the country. Don't forget they belong to the ruling elite, and they are very few, less than 0.001% of the population. So it's about self-preservation. If I were to be in government, I would never, no matter how radical and rascally I have, I will never say, go and protest. We are not doing well. Everybody will say they are doing well. The bottom line is that it's about 14, 15 months since this government got into power. And Nigerians have patiently seen how they have prioritized their own comfort and convenience rather than that of the ordinary citizen. Let me recount a few.
Okay.
We prioritized the building of the Vice President's Lodge at a princely sum of 21 billion naira, cumulatively. The National Assembly bought official vehicle for themselves at an estimated 160 million naira, between 130 to 160 million naira per unit. That's official vehicle. Look at how much the National Assembly injected into 2024 budget for their constituency projects and all whatnot. Trillions. There was a debate recently for another purchase of 2 presidential jets. And you ask yourself, you have about half a dozen that you inherited. You say, oh, you know what? They are giving us problem. Meanwhile, about 10 billion naira was estimated to be annually voted for maintenance of this presidential fleet. It may not be up to that, but billions, let's just say billions of naira.
Yeah.
So if they voted billions of naira to maintain presidential fleet, they now say, oh, you know what? These planes were bought 16 years ago. And so bloody what? There are planes of 40 years still flying. Does the president fly on daily basis? Is he operating a charter or commercial flight? So why should the age of purchase of a presidential jet be the reason why it's malfunctioning?
I heard someone saying Biden is using the one used by Senior Bush. Not even.
I'm not even bothered about whether they are buying from wherever. The bottom is like, you and I, ordinary citizen, I know how much I'm owing in debt as I speak with you, seated there. How much of indebtedness I've incurred
to augment
my little income. I have bills to pay. I have to pay school fees, I have to pay rent, I have to service so many people. I have a lot of dependents. So just those 5 or 6 things I've told you were done not by Buhari, they were done under this administration. It was under this administration we were getting to know that Navy bought a presidential yacht for over 5 billion naira. Is it 5 or 50 billion naira? So when you look at the quantum of resources that were used for the luxurious to service the luxurious lifestyle of the people in government, and these are just the few that we know. Nobody has been able to cost how much each of the 48 ministers, their operational vehicles, how much it costs to run it per month, their established allowances and all of that. Remember, this same administration, when they went to UNGA, UN General Assembly, in September 2023, we had the highest delegation, 1,411.
Maybe they came back with business opportunities.
And the president says, oh, you know, we didn't pay for everybody. We paid for only about 400. Over 400, what did they go there to do?
Maybe they came back with business opportunities.
Which business? And let's be frank with ourselves. I'm saying this, I wish Ortega was here seated, and let's discuss this, because this is the perception Nigerian youths are having that will make them not to believe them.
We allow them to talk.
It's good that you allow them to talk. Yeah. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's good that you allow them to talk. Look at what is on your screen.
Yeah, basic salary is there.
That's basic salary. It does not include ESTA codes, traveling, and all of that. The House of Reps did something laughable recently. They said they are ready to give 50%. Half of their salary.
Yes, basic salary.
And basic salary is said to be 600,000.
Yes.
So they are giving up 300,000. And I laughed.
Why did you laugh?
I laughed because it is not to go and collect 600,000 that they will kill and maim to contest for those positions.
The perks, maybe.
The perks is where the thing is. Where anybody that is deceiving you because it's in government and is showing you payslip does not tell you the story.
But any other thing, maybe apart from revenue mobilization?
Forget it. I'm not even. You can even talk of DTA, ESTA codes. That still will not give you. Let me break it down for you. Recently, getting to a month ago, I did an article in my column in The Punch, and I wrote about the nexus between campaign finance and corruption. And what was the nexus I was trying to draw? I listed all the things that you need to spend money on to contest, to run for office in Nigeria. The legit and illegitimate expenditure items that you have to incur, they are too numerous to mention. And that's why nomination form, no matter how many millions they call it, is just a fraction of what a contestant, a serious contestant, I'm not talking of also ran, making up the numbers, benchwarmers, I'm not talking of that. The frontline candidates in the dominant parties, what they spend. Some people spend close to $1 billion to become senators. Now, I'm extrapolating. Now, how can I spend that huge sums of money to run my elections, to come and be handing 600,000 as House of Reps member, or to come and be handing even 1 million naira as a senator? How long, in 4 years that I will be a senator or House of Reps, can I even recoup up to 10% of my...
From the salary and all that.
Of the salary.
Okay, meaning we have a serious problem with our governance structure. Now what I'm trying to say, Jide, is the elephant in the room. Don't you think the executive and the legislature, they've started recovering the lost ground going by some of the things that happened today. I want you to talk about them. For instance, they have signed the minimum wage. They say it's more than double because there is an addition of 10,000. Before it was 30, now 60. Now, the minister, 70, yeah. Now, the Minister of Information said the president personally is actually protesting on behalf of Nigerian youths. They have cut down the price of rice from 80,000 to 40. Don't you think Nigerians should give them a listening ear?
Yes, you know, it's good. And that's why I agree with Joseph Daudu SAN in his Facebook post that even if this protest does not go on, it has achieved a lot. And that was a post made yesterday without even taking into account. I know this protest has set them into a frenzy. It has put them on overdrive.
It forced them to sit up.
To sit up. So much so that you could see the seriousness, that the speed of life with which they were now addressing issues. In fact, I learned that as of last week, Minister of Youth Development is saying that there is 100 billion naira to support micro, small, and medium enterprises. All of a sudden, the NNPC is advertising for positions to recruit.
And even today, they announced selling crude to Dangote.
Yes, the presidential order that they have to sell crude to Dangote in Naira. I don't know who taught them. Because you see, these are the fuel. What is putting fuel to fire? There is a newspaper, I don't exactly remember which of them, that says petrol landing cost is now 1,300.
Quite a number of media houses.
Now, 1,300. And that in Lagos, a liter is being sold for 850 naira. Now, how will you not expect people to join this protest when you are celebrating in one hand minimum wage? Do you know by how much Nigerian currency has been devalued? The devaluation is over 300%. So if workers, and this is just going to affect positively federal government workers, the state government workers still has to be begged, coerced, cajoled, lobbied for them to pay. Recently, just last week, the governor of Bauchi State says that there is no way they can pay. That he doesn't know how he will pay 70,000 minimum wage. That they were looking at paying between 50 to 60. Now he's 70. That he doesn't know how that's a serving governor. So the NLC will still have to go around the 36 states to compel and coerce to make sure that the state government are paying. What about the organized private sector? I've said that businesses that are not flourishing, how will you expect them to give you minimum wage when the business, if you are into manufacturing, you have so much unsold goods, or the services are no longer being patronized? And remember, this minimum wage has a threshold of, I think, 15 or 20 staff before you can activate it to say, I must collect, like domestic servants, all those shopkeepers will not be beneficiaries. So while it is good, it's a good omen, and I must commend the tinubu administration for trying its level best to do things that will make this protest unnecessary. But I think we have gotten to a situation that the youth of Nigeria has made up their mind. They can only...
You think some will still go out?
It was reported that there was protest in Niger State.
Yes, along the Abuja, Kaduna.
So and that's Bago saying. Bago was saying last week that there is not going to be any single protest in Niger State. In Lagos, some people allegedly were picked up who were carrying placards today. So I think what the president needs to do is to further between this day. It's a good thing that he has started rolling out these initiatives, but he needs to back it up with a presidential address that will give timelines for which okay, CNG buses. We have been promised CNG buses since July 31st, 2023. We have not seen one CNG bus. It's not just recently he said he's giving state government 10 billion.
Yes, but Ortega, when we roll his recording, he said they are now helping, unions like NURTW and all that to optimize their vehicles. They are giving to convert their vehicles to CNG.
But yes, you are converting, but do you know the price of CNG itself? I don't know how much of difference between compressed natural gas and the
approaching 1 million.
And the cooking gas. The price of cooking gas has also gone up. So in fact, cooking gas is almost more expensive than petrol. That's for domestic use. So I don't know how much of that. I'm not an industry expert on the different types of gases. But what I'm saying is that government has started well. From last week, a number of initiatives have been rolled out. But I hope it's not just for optics. Okay. It is also important. There are ROS, there are masterminds, there are those. I saw a letter that was written purportedly by somebody to Minister of FCT saying that they want to use the Eagle Square. That kind of person is not a faceless person. You can invite those whom you know. Intelligence will give you the identities of these people. You can invite them. You don't have to arrest them. You don't have to harass them. You don't have to hunt them. It's when you do that it will exacerbate the situation. But have a presidential dialogue with them. Okay. Call them and say, my children, I feel your pain. I know that we have been suboptimal in our performance. But remember, when a train leaves a station, it gathers momentum slowly. Yes. And we are ready to make the needed sacrifice to make sure that we give you a better future. We even appreciate having some of you coming into a committee that will oversee some of the implementation of activities that we intend to do. By the time he meets with them in a fatherly manner, just the same way he resolved the issue of NLC. Yes. Remember that almost everybody thought NLC was not going to get that minimum wage. But they got it. But they got it.
Now finally, Jide,
when he met with them.
Since we're rounding up, we have less than 1 minute. Yeah. I want you to summarize. In the event, youths and other Nigerians resolve to go out, how do you think security operatives should handle them? This should be in less than 1 minute.
For me, the security operatives should divide themselves into different units or groups. There are those who should man our critical infrastructure, public infrastructure, safeguard them so that nobody will go and destroy them, vandalize them. Then there are those who should provide security for the youth who are going to be on protest.
They should also be protected.
Yes, they need to be protected from hoodlums, because hoodlums will want to cash in, to loot, because that's their own primary. They are not interested in the match. They want to loot.
To take advantage.
It's for the security agencies to cordon off and make sure that they have a planned route where miscreants will not be able to mingle with them and start looting private, because when they can't access public facility, they may want to go. Look at what happened to Edu industrial estates, where they started looting the warehouses that are along that. Yes. When they start touching the automats, somewhere in Akwa areas. So they need to have, the intelligence unit must be able to share information and take preemptive action.
All right.
But the protesters should also not disturb those who don't want to join them.
All right, Mr. Hojo. Thank you very much for your informed perspective on this. You've been fair to both sides, and we thank you for coming to the studio.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, and that's wrap up of the program for tonight. Join us again tomorrow for more conversations like this, and also on Friday, where you get to phone into the program and share your thoughts on various national issues. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now. I'm Hamza Idris.